My business was actually called something completely different before the books came out. I thought, well, now's the opportunity to really create more of a personal brand because this book has my name on it and it will go everywhere, and it went all around the country and all around the world. So that was a good opportunity for me to change that and create more of a personal brand experience, so that then if I had any offshoots of anything else that came from it, which I did, I had an art range and a rug range that came with the books. It just was a bit more streamlined.
And so with the books, you ended up creating the art range,
Mm-hmm.
the rug range, and just selling it to the – so you basically – you got the database, so you got the readers, and then because you had their attention already and because you'd already brought them value and they already respected you and liked you, you were then able to offer them
a couple of other products.
To increase revenue. So I'm pro and con with the books. I'm not 100% sold on the books. At one side of me, it's like I understand why all these business people are trying to write books. You know, it plays to that social proof element. And that's what they're trying to do, I guess. There's almost too many people doing books.
I know.
And it kills books being good.
Especially now that you can self-publish.
Yeah. Can you – what's that? What does that mean?
Well, I had a publisher, so I never went down that path, but you can write your own book and get it printed and then order a whole bunch of copies and sell them yourself.
Yes.
So
yeah, of course.
when you work with the publisher, they do all of the design work, they edit the book, they distribute it into the bookstores.
They make sure that it's going to be
good. They do the
good.
marketing for you. Yeah, exactly. And then you get a percentage of sales.
Whereas I could just write a big piece of shit and print it and sell it everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's just sucking away from the legitimacy. And there's also too many people that think that they're too special.
Yeah,
you know
or
what I mean?
you get 10,000 followers on Instagram and you're like, oh, well, I should write a book.
Yeah. I'm going to explain how I got the first 1,000.
No one cares.
Yes. Would you recommend that going down the book alley is something that the other business owners should do?
Yeah, I didn't realize what kind of an impact it would have on my career at the time. I knew that it would be big, but I didn't quite realize what other opportunities would come from not just selling the book.
Yeah, it's good to use in your marketing.
Yeah, it's really good.
Again, it
marketing
is
tool.
that social proof, and you are delivering people value.
Yeah.
You're delivering your value in the form of – it's kind of like what we do with this podcast, actually. We give value to all business owners that listen to it by sharing the knowledge of our members and the experiences through their business without them even actually having our actual service. That's pretty much what your book – it's basically your podcast.
A big part of writing a book is that you need to have some kind of formula or have a story or combine both, and that's when it will be successful because people remember the stories. They don't necessarily remember the exact layout of what that formula is, but they will remember the stories that you tell around that formula.
I like that a lot. A formula and story. Who taught you that? Is that something you just learned?
A coach that I worked with years ago when I was writing e-courses, she told me that.
So when you're doing an e-course or when you're sharing something, because that's super relevant for a lot of things. That's almost like marketing.
Yeah.
You know what else is quite a cool thought is like you probably by writing your book actually were studying your craft and got better. You understood it better. You broke it down more.
Yeah.
And perhaps people should write books in a sense simply to better as an exercise in order to better understand what it is they do as a business.
So I'll meet with the client and just listen. Like a big part of it is listening, and then working out what it is that they need because they might not know what they need yet. And listening to what the needs and the wants of everyone that's using the space is because the kids might use the space in one way and then, the parents use it in another way in the evening or the weekends are different to the way you'd use the house in the weekdays. So working out what it is that needs to actually be put into the space is a huge part of it. We go through probably 2 or 3 phases of design elements. So I'll put together what I think will work, get their feedback, make any changes.
What you do is really difficult, I'm sure, because you're fucking with people's homes. You're changing their home. You must have to tread relatively carefully.
It's so personal and so emotional. When you're doing commercial interiors or corporate stuff, there's less emotion involved. It's more you have to manage everyone's expectations in the decision-making team.
Keep within budget.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing to do. With residential stuff, oh my God, if they've come through a divorce, then they've got all the baggage of the divorce. The kids have been dragged through that. They want to make a nice space for the children because they've had to deal with all the crap that's just happened, in the previous home. If they've had a death in the family, that then sparks there's certain events in people's lives that will spark contacting a designer, and some of them are really heavy. Like after a death, you can feel it in the house. It's their private space.
Yeah, and there's a current vibe going on in that home. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
that's always going to be the vibe. In fact, that's probably what you're there to fix.
Exactly. And usually it is something negative that they don't like about the house and they've picked fault in things. And so they can't find a way through that. They just hate it. And they're like, now it's your problem. You solve the issue for me.
I've actually never thought of what you do like that. I've always just thought,
Just make it pretty.
yeah, well, rich people get bored of their furniture and change shit. But really, no, that's not. It's a really emotive thing. It's a really, it's almost a pivotal change. They're changing the thing that is their stability, which is your home.
Even birth and having new babies and, you know, growing a family in the house, there will be certain things in your life that will change the fundamental way that you use the house. And if you don't know how to do it well, then you don't feel comfortable and happy at home. My job is not actually picking out the physical furniture and decorative items and lighting and all that kind of stuff. My job is actually to make them feel good in the house. And how weird is that? Like, I'm an interior designer. I'm not like a psychologist.
Yeah.
But I end up doing a lot of counselling between couples that can't decide on stuff.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
If you know these 5 elements, you'll be fine. So 1 is understanding the needs and wants of the people that use the space, which I talked about before. 2 is colour and pattern. So how to use colour well, how to use pattern properly. That's where people come unstuck. They get, you know, the beige sofa and the beige rug and then they go, everything's really beige.
Everything's beige.
Yeah. How do we make it more fun?
Yeah.
So that's adding the colour and pattern. Getting the shape and size right. That's often somewhere where people come unstuck and they go and buy the biggest sofa that they think they can fit in the space and then they're like, there's no room for anything else. Or they buy a sofa that's too small and doesn't work. So getting proportions right. Lighting is a huge part of it as well. That's often forgotten about because when you're planning something, especially if you've moved out of the house, lighting doesn't really come into it until you go back in to stand in the physical space and you're like, oh shit, we should have put lights in that corner or whatever. And placement, so where are you actually putting the furniture so that the traffic can flow properly through the space and you don't run into, you know, a sofa or a TV unit.
And with lighting, is that the actual light fitting or is that how the room's lit?
No, yeah, it's how the room's lit. So I use a combination. I don't just use downlights. And if I do use downlights, I always make sure there's a dimmer switch so that you can control the light levels throughout various times of the day. And then wall sconces, so lighting the walls up or lighting the walls down. It's much more flattering on our face than lighting from above us. It gives a nicer glow.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And you know what I like about that? You don't truly understand something unless you can summarize it into like what you've done into 5
like
things.
a formula.
Yeah, it's a formula.
Yeah.
And that just shows you know so well what you do that you're able to formulate it and then share that formula with others